Hello everyone. So this is lesson 3 of unit 2, and this is where I try to tie the historical forms of imperialism that we already studied in the class from lesson 1 to lesson 2, that being Spanish and British imperialism, to modern day forms of imperialism in modern China. I title it economic subjugation because a lot of the kind of tactics that China uses is kind of imperialism by economics. And we go into it during the lesson. Also, if you notice, this is the last lesson before the final assignment, which is a structured discussion. So I formatted this lesson very much in a way as like a final discussion light, I guess, because I always like my students to be able to have like a practice final before they have their actual final. So they can kind of go through the motions and see how the final will look and actually perform to kind of recognize their strengths and their weaknesses before I actually have to grade them for real, to assess their ability to understand the key components of a unit. So for this unit, that's comparison and cause and effect analysis, and then also just content knowledge of imperialism and a little bit of application to imperialism today. So for the goal is being able to analyze the impact of Chinese imperialism by participating in a practice class discussion. So that's what I was talking about, how this is kind of like a trial before their true trial in the final assignment for this unit. The vocab, I can probably expand upon this as well. I tend to not like to have too many vocab words just so they only have to focus on a couple main themes. And I'll show you those themes in the articles and the videos that they watch. But debt trap diplomacy is one of the big ones, Belt and Road Initiative, and tariff. So I did focus on these type of vocab words versus other things that the articles go over, because I am focusing more on the economic aspect of the of Chinese imperialism, which is a pretty not a unique trait as other systems and societies who have participated in imperialism have also utilize economics as a way to subjugate other people, but it is something that's pretty that's in the forefront of Chinese imperialism. So for the agenda, I introduced the guidelines for effective discussions. I've actually already done this for my class, but just to kind of remind them to not attack the speaker, but attack the ideas, or I wouldn't even say attack, but discuss the ideas, not try to attack other people. And then we look over some note-taking tools for the practice discussion, which I've structured down here in the material section. Also read the articles and view the videos. There are 2 articles and 2 videos to help fill out the practice discussion worksheet. And then there's a time for us to have an actual discussion, a practice discussion, of course. And then they get some time to reflect and game plan for their final unit discussion. So there's a lot of materials here. I know. There's like videos. Oh, there's the other video. Videos, and then 2 articles, and all these different worksheets. So how this works, I'll just kind of go from top to bottom in terms of the materials. So first up, there's the discussion norms. I think I went over this in one of my previous videos, but kind of like, respect the speaker, be an active listener, keep the conversation academic, which has been probably the most difficult thing for me to do with my students. Because sometimes they do talk about like historical or political stuff in class. It's just not related to the topic that we're supposed to be talking about. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But then this is the biggest one. There's actual discussion prep for this final. So they get to practice the discussion prep and the actual discussion part of actual discussion, I guess. So this is one of the big things that they haven't done in the past, coming prepared to a discussion. So how do you actually come prepared to a discussion? Of course, they've had some practice with some of our previous activities, like write something interesting that you want to talk about in like our mini discussions, specifically with the Spanish imperialism unit, or the Spanish imperialism lesson. But they get more time to practice this, and I'll show you what that looks like in the discussion worksheet. So this practice discussion worksheet is what we are going to utilize for our practice discussion, as it sounds. So click on that, and there are 4 questions, but there are 4 different sources that they look at. Again, 2 videos and 2 articles. So for each video and article, which I'll show you and do like a brief outline of each video and article, just main idea and evidence for the main idea, Also, do they agree with the author? In what ways might the analysis be limited? How does this article relate to ideas of imperialism we have already explored in class? So you can relate that to any phase of British imperialism, or is there someone on this? Okay. Any phase of imperialism, of British imperialism or Spanish imperialism. And then some interesting points or questions that they want to bring up about this article during the practice class discussion. So that's that's kind of like one of those key tools I want them to prepare for with discussion. Actually being able to look at the article and pick out interesting points or topics that you can kind of take the lead on when discussing. Again, this might be a bit, what's it called? A bit ambitious, and that's okay if we fail in being this ambitious in terms of like them actually being able to do this skill. But I want to at least give them the opportunity, and they might surprise me, but there's still plenty of discussion questions to go around. To where if they're unable to do this, we can still have a fruitful discussion. It's just not as fun, I guess. So those are the questions they answer while they read each of the videos, and these are the follow-up questions they answer after reading the videos or reading the articles and watching the videos. So which ways can Chinese policy be described as imperialist? Give examples, because there's actually like a lot of modern like political pundits, I guess, who actually argue that Chinese policy isn't imperialist. So maybe they can try to argue against kind of some of the articles, or they can argue for some of the articles with Chinese policy being described as imperialist. Secondly, how might the lives of those impacted by Chinese imperialist policies be affected? I focus on kind of, I guess, a lot of different groups. So there would be a lot of evidence and kind of things that they can pull in from the videos and articles for that question. In which ways has the international community reacted to Chinese imperialism? And then finally, do you agree with the contention that China is truly an imperialist power? I gotta reword that. Why? So yeah, those are the questions. And then there's like this little practice discussion reflection, which I'll show you at the end. And then I'll also show you this towards the end as well. So there are 4 different sources, 2 articles and 2 videos. One article focuses on the Belt and Road Initiative, so that very aggressive overseas infrastructure projects that China is kind of their normal policy is right now, specifically looking at certain aspects of it, specifically the debt trap diplomacy. And then the next article is I'll click on them real quick so I can kind of go over them. Sorry. It's an interactive article, so it's kind of cool that you can like kind of look at stuff. They have these like little charts that are active instead of just stagnant. So I think that's pretty cool. Your students might like that a little bit more than traditional articles. I thought this was pretty well written. And then the Hong Kong protest article. I don't know about you, but my students like really struggle to read stuff that is long. So I mean, it's important for them to have opportunities to read long things, but occasionally when I can do them a solid, then I'll give them like shorter articles. So it talks about the Hong Kong protests explained in 100 and 500 words, so they can get the bare basics of kind of what's going on. It's just a very contentious modern day issue that a lot of my students have already asked me about. So I want to talk about that aspect of Chinese imperialism. And then finally, the last 2 are the Uyghur camps in China and kind of the re-education camps that are more like prisons. So they'll get to actually see some video footage. So this is really good for like seeing how those subjugated are affected by Chinese policy, obviously. And then finally, kind of more of a geopolitical video, which is pretty good, is why China is building islands in the South China Sea and how that's an expansion of their the reach of their military. This is a huge expansion of the reach of their military and how it goes against kind of international law. And it's good for showing how the international community is reacting to Chinese imperialism. So yeah. So basically, they read all those videos, answer all the discussion questions. So these 4 and these 4. And then finally, after they're done answering all these questions, and you give them like a set amount of time, it can be like synchronous, asynchronous. You can do some class time. You can do some outside of class time. Then you have a practice discussion with these 4 main ideas, and you can structure that however you want to. I have certain ideas that we can discuss later, but yeah, that's kind of how I'm basically trying to do the discussion. And it's going to be mirroring the way that I want the discussion to go, kind of the final discussion. So there are certain things that they need to do, which you can see in the final discussion video that I'll have. But after they have the discussion, then there's the practice discussion reflection. So they're writing a short paragraph analyzing the performance, looking at how they performed in both the preparation phase, so actually filling out the worksheet, specifically like question 4, being like more of an active participator or an active preparer, and also the discussion phase, so like when we actually had time to talk to each other, how did they do? So following discussion norms, amount of times you participated, evidence in your answers related to the articles and videos. So those are kind of like the categories that I used to define if they had a successful discussion or not. And then I also want them to identify one tangible change they can make in either category to ensure that they do very well in the final discussion. So kind of going into the final discussion, there's one more thing. I guess I'll go over the final discussion prep in the next video actually, because there's an article attached that they read for the final discussion. And then there's also certain discussion prep questions that they need to do that final discussion. So that's really not related to this lesson. I just posted it here because I want them to be able to see it as a reminder that they need to do it before the final discussion. That's why I have this like bolded, read the following article and prepare for a final discussion next class by filling out the discussion prep sheet and reading over the discussion rubric in the final tab labeled final discussion. But yeah, that's basically the lesson. So it's kind of like a search and find, where you give them what to search and they kind of find the answers to the practice discussion worksheet. Then you go over it together in a more structured discussion format where I'm not going to be like a super active person in the discussion. I'm mostly just kind of making sure that the conversation stays academic. They continue to follow the discussion norms and then prompt them when they need to be prompted to kind of follow along with the questions. But I hope it's a little bit more student driven than our little super duper practice discussions from the past, like during the Spanish imperialism and the British imperialism lessons. Yeah, that's all I have. So let me know what you think about this, and feel free to use anything like always. It's really nice that we can collaborate. I actually really like making these little videos, kind of sharing my the curriculum that I've designed for the students. And yeah, I hope it helps you in the future, even if it's just in some little way, like you even just like, oh, I'm going to use some of the vocab or something like that. But I hope this can help out a little bit. So thanks for your time.